The length of arc T is pi over 4. The terminal point is the result of a clockwise rotation, so T equals negative pi over 4. 3 of the statements are true, 1 is false. Identify the false statement. Alright, well, just real quick, if we draw this point but reflect it across the x-axis into the first quadrant, we would have this rectangle here, and for pi over 4, that is about, in degrees, that's a 45-degree angle. So this becomes a 45, 45, 90 triangle, which has the equal length legs. So what that means for up here is that the cosine and the sine of pi over 4 are equal. Now, when we flip this point down to the below the x-axis, now it's negative pi over 4 angle, this angle here. Now, the cosine is going to remain the same, a positive value, but the sine is now going to be negative because now we're going below the x-axis into the fourth quadrant. So now let's look at these. The sine of negative pi over 4, which is this negative value here, which is about equivalent to 0.707 when you actually take pi, which is 3.14, you divide it by 4, then you take the sine of that, and you make sure you're in radians. If you use your calculator, you will get 0.707. Now, if you take sine of negative pi over 4, this will become negative 0.707. Plus cosine of that same angle, negative pi over 4. Now, here's our angle. The cosine is still positive, and because we have shown that these legs are going to be of equal length, since pi over 4 is 45 degrees, and we're dealing with cosine and sine being equal lengths, that means that cosine of this angle is positive 0.707. So if you have negative 0.707 plus positive 0.707, those do add up to 0. Therefore, this is true, so we can eliminate A. The cosine of negative pi over 4, which is 0.707, is greater than the sine. Well, the sine of negative pi over 4, which we've already determined here, is negative 0.707. Positive 0.707 is greater than negative 0.707, so this is also true. We can eliminate it. The cosine of negative pi over 4 is 0.707, as we've previously determined, equals the cosine of pi over 4. So basically, what we're asked is this value here the same for this angle as it is for this angle? And that is true. You can see they both share this exact same leg, same length. It's positive. It's going to be 0.707 for both this cosine, the cosine of this angle and the cosine of this angle. This is the pi over 4 angle. This one is the negative pi over 4. So this is also 0.707. These are equal. Therefore, that is a true statement. We can eliminate it. However, the same cannot be said for sine. So the sine of negative pi over 4 is this right here. So this is negative 0.707. And the sine for pi over 4 is this right here, which is positive 0.707. So they have the same, if you put them in absolute values, they do have the same length. However, sine of pi over 4 is positive, while the sine of negative pi over 4 is negative. So this is not true. The answer to this question is D.